Now you know a video is going to be good when it starts with a disclaimer, and this video starts with two. Firstly, in the video, I'm specifically talking about cherry shrimp. I'm specifically talking about Neocaridina shrimp. I'm not talking about Caridina shrimp, the crystal shrimp, the bee shrimp, etc. We really are focusing here on the cherry shrimp. And secondly, I'm discussing how I go about acclimating my shrimp, and you can feel free to acclimate your shrimp however you please. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Richard, and I literally wrote the book on Neocaridina shrimp. So recently on this channel, I mentioned that I had purchased two new colonies of shrimp, a colony of snowballs and a colony of yellow cherry shrimp. And a number of people contacted me and said they wanted to know more information about how to go about acclimating shrimp. Now there are only really two different ways we can add shrimp to their new tanks. We can do the so-called plop and drop method, or we can drip acclimate them. And I think, first of all, we should briefly look at the two different methods and then discuss the pros and the cons of each. So the first method is plop and drop. And what that essentially means is you get your new shrimp in the bag or the container they traveled to you in. You cut the top off or pull the elastic band off. You pour the contents of the bag into a net which is suspended above a bucket or a jug. The contents passes through the net with the water going into the bucket and the shrimp remaining in the net. You then take that net and drop the shrimp into the tank. You plop the contents into the net and you drop the shrimp into their new tank, hence the plop and drop method. Now the second method of acclimating our shrimp is the drip acclimation method. And in this technique, you take the contents of the bag and you tip the whole thing into a jug or a bucket. You place that jug or bucket near to the tank the shrimp are going into, and then you take a small piece of airline hosing or some thin tubing and you tie a knot in the end, just a loose knot, but a knot nevertheless. Put one end in the tank, do a little suck on the end of the hose with a knot in it, and you drop that into the bucket. And because you put a knot in that hose, the water will travel down, it will siphon out of the tank, but very slowly. Because of the knot, the water will drip, drip, drip into the bucket. And the idea being the contents of the tank slowly mixes with the water in the bucket, and you might let them drip acclimate for a couple of hours or even longer. And then when you're ready, you take the shrimp and then you put them in the tank. Now these are essentially the only two methods, certainly that I'm aware of, for adding shrimp to their new tank, although some people might have slight variations. They're essentially the two techniques. Now before I tell you which method I prefer to use, let me ask you a question. Would you enjoy one or two shrimp keeping videos every single week from somebody who's literally living and breathing this hobby every single day? If the answer is yes, then why not subscribe to the channel? So which method do I prefer? Well, I plop and drop every single time. In fact, I've plopped and dropped every single colony of shrimp I've ever owned. Now, most people on the internet, most people on YouTube will tell you, you have to drip acclimate. If you don't drip acclimate, your shrimp will die. And in my experience, that simply isn't the case. I genuinely think the vast majority of the internet are against plopping and dropping because someone else has told them that you have to drip acclimate. Very few people have run A/B testing where they set up half a dozen tanks for the plop and drop, half a dozen tanks for the drip acclimating, and see the results. Most people, in my opinion anyway, are just sharing third-hand information. You have to drip acclimate otherwise. People will tell you, if you don't acclimate and your shrimp are buried when you put them in the tank, the female will drop all her eggs. And that's not true. In the snowball colony, two of the females came in buried, and a week later, they're still buried, carrying their eggs. Down in the yellow colony, down here, one of the females in the bag was buried, and she still is now. She's quite happy. It simply isn't true to say if you plop and drop your shrimp, the females will drop the eggs. Another thing you might hear is if you plop and drop, it's so stressful on the shrimp that they will instantly molt, and molting early can kill them. And I have to say, from the two colonies, there's nearly 30 shrimp across both colonies. I haven't seen any evidence of a shrimp molting. Is it possible they molted behind the plants? Yeah, of course it is. But I haven't seen any evidence of it. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware of ever losing a number of shrimp because I plopped and dropped them. And a lot of people say, it's incredibly stressful. The process of plopping them straight in the tank is stressful, and that can kill your shrimp. And I would point out that before these shrimp arrived, they were living in someone else's tank. That man or lady opened the tank, scooped the shrimp out, put them in a bag, put a piece of netting in, tied the bag off, shoved it in a box, put it in the postal service where they're banged and bashed about for 24 hours, having no doubt been in vans and trains and maybe even planes. Then they got to my house, I opened the box, took them out, and the most stressful part would be when I tipped them into the tank. In my experience, it simply isn't the case. Now, I don't object if somebody wants to drip acclimate. The beauty is this is an individual hobby. Everybody can do what works for them. What I object to is new hobbyists being told, unless you drip acclimate, you will kill your shrimp. If you go onto any number of forums, you will see a post that goes along the lines of, I got some new shrimp and I put them in the tank and they died. Quick as a flash, someone will respond, how did you acclimate them? Oh, I just put them in the tank. Well, that's where you went wrong. You should have drip acclimated. Sometimes people even respond and say, I drip acclimated for an hour. And the response will be, well, you should have drip acclimated for 2 hours. I think as a hobby, we're often guilty of just repeating information we've heard elsewhere and not actually bringing our own experiences to the table. There can be any number of reasons that new shrimp die when they're added to the tank. Maybe they were sick to start with, maybe they were poor quality, maybe the stress of going through the postal system is what caused them to die. Maybe the tank wasn't set up properly, maybe the temperature was off or the pH was too high or too low, whatever it might have been. I would love to hear in the comments your guys' experience of how you added your shrimp to your tanks. Did you plop and drop? Did you drip acclimate? Have you had success or failures with either? And if you're in the process of setting up a brand new shrimp tank, then you might want to watch this video next. Thanks for watching.